Hello, my lovelies. I'm your host, Serenity, and today, on QUORA, we are taking a look at what is the creepiest unexplained event you know of. Delia Lopez answered, "Back in 2010, I was 13 and about to go take a shower. At this age, I started to be reckless. I would delete all my messages, incoming, outgoing calls, and place my phone under my pillow. I went to take a shower, about 10 to 15 minutes, and as soon as I opened the door, my mother was standing there, asking why I was pranking her. I was confused and explained I was in the shower the whole time. She explained she was sitting in the living room on the phone with my aunt and got a call from my phone. She answered and heard a little girl say, 'Hello, mommy.' She responded, 'Hello?' And the little girl said, 'What are you doing?' She responded, 'Watching TV. What are you doing?' The little girl, 'I'm sitting next to you, looking at you.' And then the phone hung up. My mom went to check on my sister, who was too young to even play on the phone, and it was only us three at home. I immediately went to check my phone, and there was nothing. No incoming, no outgoing. We ended up sleeping at my grandma's house that night. A few months later, my uncle was at my house with my aunt, and he moved into the room that was mine. One night, he said they were watching a movie with the door open and seen a little girl walk from my mother's room into the living room. We were not home that night. Still have no explanation to the phone call. Garth Voigt answered, "I could lose all credibility by writing this. I am a scientist and I believe in supernatural phenomenon. Actually, by definition, in my honest opinion, if it occurs in the natural world, then it's not supernatural. It's preternatural. It's a natural phenomenon for which we don't have an explanation. Many things were once attributed to gods, when in fact they were natural phenomenon. Lightning and planets come to mind. The reason I believe in paranormal is because of personal experience. Starting at 8 years old, I started having dreams that would happen a couple weeks later. These weren't small things. They were major events that involved mass injury, death, and destruction. I would have to conclude that I was delusional, except that I told people about these events before they happened. This really disturbed a lot of people. Frankly, I was scared to death of these predictions. At age 8, you start knowing what is and isn't real. There are no vampires, tooth fairy, ghosts, or ESP. But there was ESP, and now all bets were off. What other nightmares were real that I was told weren't? If any good came from this, it would be that I saved/averted disaster for people 3 times. However, I wasn't able to save anyone from the dream I had. I am describing this dream because it was the most detailed, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I still hope it was a coincidence, but the amount of detail makes me think it's highly unlikely. All the prophetic dreams start the same. It's pitch black. Then I feel a sickening lurch, like an elevator suddenly stopping. Then everything flares into existence, and I have a sense of dread as to what effing horror is about to happen. A lot of times in these dreams, I see the event through the eyes of an observer. This was the case in this dream. It happened in 1986. I was suddenly in a research office/industrial building. The observer was panicked, very panicked. I could get information on a subconscious level. I couldn't ask questions directly, but the information would be there. I asked what the problem was, and the info was nuclear disaster. I asked if there was a nuclear war, and the information indicated that no, this wasn't a nuclear war. I was confused. I couldn't figure out what kind of nuclear disaster didn't involve a nuclear war. It's important to note one detail at this point. I noticed the smell of mustard plants, like what I used to smell growing up in the East SF Bay area. The person began running down a hallway and got to a room. It looked ransacked, like everyone left in a hurry. I also noticed that a metal screen over a window was partially melted. I was looking out the window at a dense forest, like what you would see in the far north of North America, or in Russia. Some of the trees were brown, like they had been scorched. Then, really quickly, I saw an orangish cloud moving rapidly across the sky. Simultaneously, I felt this dry, burning heat in my nostrils, and the smell of mustard intensified. The person was suddenly resigned to the fact that it was too late. There would be no saving of him, even if help did arrive. Help did arrive, in the form of a truck-like ambulance, and I got in. There were badly injured people, with burns, and who were vomiting. We were taken to a makeshift clinic with many more injured people. The person lost it and started thinking, "Oh my God, it's too late, and no one will ever know, no one will ever know, no one will ever know." Repeated over and over. I woke up screaming. I knew a lot more people were going to die than what was going to be reported. Because of the intensity of the dream, I told a number of people about it, including my mom and stepdad. 2 weeks after the dream, Chernobyl happens. I was slow to connect all the dots, but I began piecing things together. I now knew what kind of nuclear disaster didn't involve a nuclear war. Then, the news had a shot of the inside of the Chernobyl nuclear plant control room. A hallway coming off it looked like the hallway the person was running through. Survivors began reporting that the trees in the area looked brown/dead. Then, survivors described the burning dry heat as the reactor had the meltdown. Then, there was the last detail. It was maybe a few months after the dream, and I'm telling this story to college dorm mates. I get to the point that I'm describing the smell that I used to smell in the East SF Bay area. One of the dormies jumped in and said, "Was it the smell of mustard?" "How the F did you know that?" She told me that her mom had arrived in Kiev about the time of the disaster, which isn't far from Chernobyl, and as she got off the airplane, she smelled the intense scent of mustard. I freaked. I never get used to any of this. I was so distraught and freaked out that I puked. Now you can see why this phenomenon scared the living shit out of me. I'm also sick of being treated badly whenever I bring up the precog events. I'm not sure what's worse, that people think I'm crazy/deluded when I tell them about something that is going to happen, or that I'm shunned or treated like a freak when the events, almost always bad news, happen. I've had self-proclaimed psychics, the real deal is rare, tell me that I have high levels precog ability, aka I'm psychic, but I refuse to use that word to describe what I do, because use of that word makes one lose all credibility with the general population. However, the only way I can describe the reason this happens, as what I mentioned above, that it's a natural phenomenon that can't yet be explained. evolution-wise, there would be enormous selective pressure to be able to see nasty events before they happened as a way of helping the tribe remain alive. In fact, all humans predict events based on patterns. We figure out the pattern in order to know what the result X will be if we do Y. It's not a far leap to conclude that on some level we're perceiving patterns unconsciously that allow for highly accurate, precise predictions. Maybe it's an evolutionary event that just started with humans. It would make sense then that we would see events that represented a threat. That would be the most basic, visceral, and vital ability. If it's evolutionary, maybe some descendant of Homo sapiens will have a much better ability to do these things. Rather than just surviving, then maybe people could start doing things like predicting winning lottery numbers. Lotteries would have to be abandoned in this case because the element of chance is gone. Laugh if you want. I wish I could. Franklin Richardina answered. One night, I was just leaving a home burglary call. I started driving, and a neighbor lady flagged me down. She was at least 75, wearing a nightgown. I stopped and got out. She asked me if I wanted coffee. I said, "Oh no, thank you," as she was walking to her porch. She said her sons were policemen. I watched her walk in, and I said, "Thank you, but I have to go." She just kinda waved. So I got in, started driving off, and another guy, about 45, stops me and says, "Did they break into the Freeman house again?" I said, "No, your neighbor at the end of the cul-de-sac got burglarized." He said, "Why were you walking around the Freeman house?" I said, "Oh, I was just talking to the lady who lived there." He said, "No one lives there." I said, "A lady lives there. I just talked to her." He is freaking and says, "Mrs. Freeman died a year ago. The house has been boarded up." I'm telling the guy, "No, that house." He said, "Yes, that house is boarded up." So me and him walk back to the house, and I shit you not, it is boarded up and dark. That turned me into a paranormal believer that day. That is all for today's video. I will see you in the next one. Have a good day or a good night.